Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is the Retro Gaming Goose, and today we're doing a very special video of Who Remembers. I put a lot of time into this one, and we are doing Who Remembers playing every single PlayStation 1 Star Wars game. Now, Star Wars is one of the more famous or infamous sci-fi franchises that's ever existed, and I don't ever think there's going to be a sci-fi franchise that are bigger. There's just so much to Star Wars. Now, on surface level, you've got 9 main movies and then 2 spin-off movies, and then if you dig a little deeper than that, you've got like all of the animated and live action shows. You've got like Andor, Kenobi, Mandalorian, things like that, Book of Boba Fett. Then you've got Star Wars Rebels, the Clone Wars, Resistance. There's just so much Star Wars things, and if you go a little bit deeper for the like hardcore fans, you've got all of the books, you've got the High Republic, you've got the Old Republic, you've got all of the extended universe that was then made non-canon when Disney took over LucasArts. And today we're just going to look at all of the Star Wars games on PS1. Now, I thankfully have them all here, and I've gone through every single one. We're going to play through all of them, just have a quick sort of like 10-15 minute video on each one, just me talking about the games and just what they meant to me and all the things that are good about Star Wars. So we're going to continue on with the video. Now, first up, what we've got is we're going to get Star Wars Rebel Assault 2 on the PlayStation 1. I'm going to do all of these videos in order that they've come out in. So this video game came out in 1995 and is a bit of a strange one. Now, it's different to all the other Star Wars games that we have, as it comes in like this nice sort of double-sided PlayStation 1 game. As you open it up, you've got all of like a lovely little bit of a manual, and it's also 2 discs, so it's actually got a second disc because the game's absolutely massive, and there is a certain reason why the game's massive, but we'll go through that in a minute. Now, it's a bit of a strange game. It's one that I didn't play that much of as a kid, and playing it again now, well, I've got some things to say about it. Now, the first thing you'll realise with Star Wars Rebel Assault 2 are these amazing cutscenes that are beautifully acted by some B-list celebrities. Honestly, these are so hammed up and so low budget. I actually like them a lot. I think they're so stupid and so dumb. Literally every single actor here is proper chewing scenery, the best type, but they are interspersed with these really ropey CGI cutscenes. So if you're used to a certain high level special effects from Star Wars, you're not gonna find it here. Every single actor seems like they've come from some sort of CW show, or that it's like their first time they've ever stepped in front of a camera, and this is honestly adds so much charm to the actual game. So we'll start to see some gameplay in a minute, and gameplay is a very loose term as to what this is. You got to think of this game a little bit like Dragon Quest on the arcade game Dragon Quest, because there's a lot of like quick time events. There are a few moments where you get to take control of the game or what it's doing, but they're not very good and they're few and far between. So once you're sort of get to see these amazing cutscenes, you should see some of the first gameplay coming up in just a minute. Now, here we take on a role as one of the pilots that you just saw playing the B-Ring, and you have to do this in first person. It's impossible to do it in third person. It's just basically an on-rails shooter, a bit like sort of Star Fox 64, except for not as good. It is Star Wars themed, so it does get an extra point, but it's really hard, it's really clunky, the controls are really hard to get used to. Which brings us to the other type of gameplay that you have in this. So the other gameplay style is when you sort of do these corridor fight scenes, which I feel like should be part of some sort of light gun game. You have to take cover and you have to shoot, and there isn't really much else that you do in these bits. They're really hard, and enemies don't seem to like detect hits very well. It's just all over the place all the time, and like you can just see from these graphics as well, this is pretty much the best the graphics the game has to offer at the moment, and it's just repetitive. It's very repetitive, but you do get these nice little random second cutscenes in, which shows you the live actors again. Which brings us to the final type of gameplay that's in this, and it is by far the worst. You'll get to it in just a second. So starting off this section strong with just a death animation, because this is how many times I had to go through this. In these sections are kind of like an on-rails sort of flying section where you have to try and avoid all the obstacle. But the problem with this is that the CGI pre-rendered graphics behind are all over the place with hitboxes, and it sort of gives you commands to be able to turn the ship around. Here I'm flying the Millennium Falcon, but the actual background moving really is disorientating, and you will hit everything on the way. I was so painful going through this. It's really hard. I really didn't like it. So overall, Star Wars Rebel Assault 2 is not really the best Star Wars game. It has a cult following, but honestly I don't like it. It's weird, it's clunky. The only redeeming thing for this is just the cutscenes, so just watch them online. They're so much better than the actual gameplay. Next up, we've got another game from 1995, which is Star Wars Dark Forces. Now this one is actually the first game in the Star Wars Jedi Knight series, which went on to be like Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy. This is all part of the old canon of Star Wars before the sort of like before Disney took over LucasArts and sort of got rid of all the old canon, and it became Star Wars Legends. So we're still in that era. This is still pre Phantom Menace. So as you can see, when you start the game, you have a pretty standard selection screen. You get to choose between 3 difficulties: easy, medium and hard. Hard being for people that are truly masochistic, and easy just being easy. So naturally I just went for normal because I can't really remember how to play this game. Now at the start of each mission you get a briefing and a lovely 16-bit version of Mon Mothma, and honestly even when you press the start mission button it lingers on this screen for quite a while. I don't know whether it's like a hidden loading screen or something, but yeah, you just have to put up with the loading times in this game. It is a little bit better on PC, but on the PS1 it's pretty bad. And straight away, as you can see, this is a Doom clone through and through. Now what you can see here is some images I've captured from the start of the game. There's just a little brief bit of me trying to work out what the buttons are from playing it on the PlayStation 1, and yeah, it's pretty quick, it's pretty fast, and it's got all of the sound effects of Star Wars and it sounds pretty good. I like it so far. You can get some truly iconic weaponry like the blaster rifle, and if you really want you can just start punching people, which is pretty fun as well. So yeah, it's a pretty fast-paced first-person shooter in the style of Doom or Quake, and the controls are more or less the same as any of them. However, you can look up and down, but the game does not tell you how to do this, and it took me a while to work it out, and it turns out it's the L2 and L1 buttons that look up and down, which is completely alien if you're used to any sort of modern like first-person shooter game. The other mechanic the game has is it seems to have like an auto lock-on for most things, so even if you're not directly looking up, you can just keep shooting. It's also very unclear as what's a pickup item and what's just part of the scenery, but that could just be me being an idiot. And there's not really much more to say in regards to this game. It's pretty much just a Doom clone, and it works quite well. I like it. It's weird to think that this is how the Jedi Academy series started off, because you do play as Kyle Katarn. That's the person you take on the role as you just try and get through all of the sort of the levels that they have. Now overall there are 21 levels in the whole game. I've only really captured footage from the first 2 because it gets quite difficult in trying to work out what exactly the game wants you to do. So it is quite a long game. You could probably complete this in about 4 or 5 hours if you're really good and you know exactly what you're doing, where you're going and who you're shooting. And the levels are written in quite a good way. Like the story mainly comes from sort of them cutscenes that you saw, the still cutscenes, and there's a few others that I'll talk about a bit later on which are very badly voice acted. Of course they would be though, because this is a like mid-90s Star Wars game. For example, in this level you're actually stealing the plans to the Death Star, which is what was then retconned in the Rogue One film. Because for a long time this was actually Star Wars canon. It is part of the Star Wars Legends universe now, so kind of happened, kind of didn't happen, which is what sort of Disney brought in once they took over LucasArts and still wanted to kind of keep the existing canon, but just managed to annoy pretty much all of the fan base. And part of me really wishes that the rest of the Jedi Academy games came out on the PlayStation 1. For example, Dark Forces 2 and its expansion pack was never available on this platform, which is weird because the first one came out and they just never brought out the second part to it, and you can only really get it on PC. Now you can get it on Steam, which is what I have it on at the moment, but it doesn't run very well. I don't know whether that's my computer or whether it's just the game has not been optimized for modern like computers. It's just a bit of a strange one trying to play it now, and that's a real shame because I would love to show that game off because it's got some absolutely amazing live action cutscenes in it, which are just beautifully acted by some like B-list actors. It's very similar to what we've just seen in Rebel Assault 2. But thankfully they did bring sort of the Jedi Academy and Jedi Outcast over to the Xbox and the PlayStation 2, and I think also on the GameCube, and they are great ways to play that game, but they're not the best way to play it. The best way to play the game would be via the PC for the Jedi Academy series, because you can get all the mods, you can get the dismemberment mods, things like that, and it just makes the game so much better, especially with the lightsaber combat. I'm sure loads of you have already seen the videos of that game,
and how it plays. So one of my biggest complaints about this game is that you don't really get told what to do or where you're going or what you're doing. And a lot of the time you end up just running around aimlessly like I'm doing now, just trying to remember what it was just from pure memory how to play this game. Now that could just be me. I'm probably not the best when it comes to old games and remembering exactly how I used to play it. But yeah, that's pretty much one of the biggest complaints. It's not very clear what you're doing, where you're doing it. You've only really got the text at the start of the levels to really go off of. And thankfully the levels are quite small, which can be helpful, but they are a little bit complicated and a little bit sort of like lost as to what you're supposed to be doing. But once you play the level a few times, then you know exactly what you're doing. You can speed through these levels like nothing. See, I'm still currently on the first level, and I've played this level before and completed it a lot quicker, and I just don't really know I can't even remember what I was trying to do here. I was just looking at a black screen thinking, I think I found a secret area, but I hadn't, because a lot of the levels do have secrets and they do have secret areas. Now the game is very dark and you will end up getting lost a few times just because of the pure darkness of the game, and there's like the bad lighting, but it does all sort of light up with the gun, which is a nice little effect I've really liked about sort of the care that's gone into some of these like weapons and the feeling of the game. It does feel like you're sort of a covert special operations, like the last hope of the rebellion to try and get these plans. And part of it is a little bit of a shame that it was replaced by the Rogue One film. I love the Rogue One film. I think it's one of the best Star Wars films that's come out of the new sort of Star Wars films. But I also really like the canon that it was all sort of Kyle Katarn that did it, and he was this sort of like secret agent for the rebellion, sort of the Andor role that's from the show and from the film. And the fact that like this old canon has all sort of been removed into the Star Wars Legends is a real shame, because some of it is amazing, and you can see in the newer films where they've tried to take from the sort of the extended universe the best bits of the extended universe, and they just haven't got it right. Like I still feel like of reading the sort of the new Jedi Order series, they really tried to make like the sons and daughters of the original sort of heroes from the original trilogy, and really tried to pour their sort of character and personality into the sort of like Rey, Kylo Ren, people like that, and it just didn't work very well. I didn't think they had the build up for it or anything like that. And like I said in my Rogue One video, I think this is the main reason why a lot of people don't like the sort of the new canon of Star Wars or the sequel trilogy, just because they just didn't put the time and effort into making these great storylines. Again, they just tried to copy and repeat, taking the footnotes and just try and make this sort of like half-assed like version of the new canon. And by new canon I obviously mean old canon, and then just sort of just chalk it up saying, oh yeah, that's all Legends, it doesn't really matter anymore. But as you can see, we're sort of coming to the end of the level here, and it's sort of like, this is still the first level. I remember saying that they were short, but I did get a little bit lost in this level, and it's like you collect the Death Star plans, and then that's pretty much it for the first level. And overall, I really like this game. I think it's got a really good aesthetic. It looks nice, and you can tell a lot of love and care has gone into this game and to like the making of this, and just the whole series with like Jedi Academy, Jedi Outcast that come afterwards. And it is a shame that it's no longer part of the main canon of Star Wars. And for a long time, for people that can't remember a time where Phantom Menace was not out, or the prequel trilogy weren't out, this was all we had. This was like the only extra bits of Star Wars that we could use and we could like ever sort of play. If you wanted to know the extra lore of Star Wars, this was the only way you could sort of get your extra Star Wars, whether it was games, books, anything. And that's all we had. We had the original trilogy and we have this. So on that basis alone, I would recommend this game. For some people it is pretty good. It's a standard like Doom clone, and there are some other bits I wanted to show off as well, because I'm just coming to the end of the level now, and we're going to sort of flash cut to another bit here. So one of the other things that I really like about this game is in between sort of sections you have these terrible CGI'd like pre-rendered graphics, complete with these cutscenes of these like cartoon cutscenes of like, I love this animation and this stupidity of how it all plays out here. It's so like Windows 95 level of anime. Look at that face, look at that stupid face and these characters. This is all just like a random cutscene in between the missions here, and it has so much charm to it, this game, and just all of it is really fun. and you can just tell that they put a lot of effort into these bits, a lot of effort into like these cutscenes as well, because you either get like just a standard static cutscene where it just tells you what's the next mission, or you get these little sort of more animated cutscenes where you get to see some other thing. And talking about stuff that was stolen from the extended universe before Disney took over, these are actually the Dark Troopers that made an appearance in The Mandalorian. I think it was season 2 of The Mandalorian, with Moff Gideon releasing the same sort of mechanical dark soldiers out and about across like the Imperium to try and sort of quell the resistance, except for that takes place after sort of Return of the Jedi, while this one is way before. Like, this is still prequel era, well, the prequel as we sort of, the Star Wars fans knew it at the time. And again, going back to it, that's sort of what I mean when I say like how they took little snippets and little things from the extended universe that it previously established and then just kind of didn't do it that well. Like, for me, the Dark Troopers were these big imposing robotic troopers that just could destroy everything with absolute bullet sponges, and then we see them in The Mandalorian, and like, as much as The Mandalorian is a great show, they're not as threatening as they were in these games. So here we've got another sort of animated cutscene with Mon Mothma and Kyle Katarn, and this Kyle Katarn looks nothing like he does in the Jedi Academy series, which is brilliant. And also we get a little cameo there on the screen from Admiral Akbar. But overall, like, the aesthetic of this looks great, and it really did sort of like improve my enjoyment of the game, watching these ridiculous scenes and cutscenes and stuff like that. Now that I think about it, I don't think that is Admiral Akbar. I think it's just another Mon Calamari, very similar to Admiral Akbar. And I would like to know why like some of the cutscenes are completely static, just text, and some of them are these like more long drawn out animated like cutscenes. Because see, some of these are really good. You can tell they've been sort of made by like they're all 16-bit or as close to that as what the PlayStation 1 could put out. This game did also release on, I think, on the PC as well, which is a good way to play it. You can actually pick it up on Steam as well as part of like the Star Wars collection, playing like I think it comes with this, Dark Forces 2, the expansion pack, and then the other Jedi Academy games can all be picked up on Steam now. So it's probably the better way to play this, because I picked this up for about, I think it was about £10-15 for PlayStation 1 with a fully boxed copy. And you could probably do a lot better just to get it on Steam now, unless you're sort of like myself and you like to collect stuff and you have like a collection of older games. And I would recommend it for that sort of reason, if you wanted to get the box and like the original way it's played. But what I will say, going back to like the controls of the game, they're not very good on the PlayStation. They don't make a lot of sense, because I think this was before sort of pre-established controls of the game. Like you only really use the D-pad to run around, and like I said, you sort of use the L1 and L2 buttons to look up and down, and that's it doesn't actually tell you how to do that. I worked that out myself, so that's one of the other things I would say about this game, is that the controls are not sort of very sort of like easy to understand, and there's no tutorial. I think maybe in the manual it tells you how to play, but like I didn't check the manual, because, you know, why would I? I play modern games now. I expect the game to tell me how to play. I don't have to work it out. God, who do they think I am? And that's pretty much all I can really say about this game. So as you see here, we're about to go into the second mission. We've got another static cutscene here, and then we'll go straight into the mission 2, and I'll just show you some sort of like the different environments that you get in mission 2. Now this one's not as dark. It's still pretty dark, because the whole palette of this game is dark. I know it's called Dark Forces, but they really emphasize the dark on this. Right, look at the lighting. I just wanted to show off this second level how bad the lighting is, but then every time you fire your gun, it proper flashes up, and it's quite nice to see like that effect in a game so old, because this was sort of really before some of the other, like I think maybe Duke Nukem 64 was doing that sort of flash effect, and Doom definitely didn't have this, but it's got that sort of like really nice special effects, and the sounds too as well. I don't know if you can hear it as well with me talking over it, but the sound effects are spot on all the time. But yeah, that's sort of Dark Forces. It's a good game. I would recommend it. It's definitely one of the better Star Wars games that came out on the PS1. If you're going to pick it up, like I said, I probably picked it up for about £15, or give or take a little bit of money there. Can't tell you for definite. I've probably got it a few times, but the best way to play this would be on Steam, because it's a bit crisper on Steam. The graphics are a bit better, and it just works a bit nicer. See, this is the bit here where I just work out how to look up and down for the first time, and I was like, well, that changes everything. So it wasn't until like the second level that I worked out how to sort of pitch up and down with your aiming. But yeah, that's Dark Forces, the first in the Jedi Academy trilogy, and the first in sort of like the sort of Star Wars. I think it's the only first-person shooter Star Wars game that I can think of that comes to mind. I don't know if there's been another one. I definitely don't have it if there's been another one. But yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. It's got good graphics for the time, for 1995, and it's got like a really sort of charming aesthetic. But you can tell it is a Doom clone. It feels like Doom. It even has that same sort of swaying as you run and as you walk. But yeah, that's Star Wars Dark Forces, one of the Star Wars games that came out on the PlayStation 2. PlayStation 1 is what I meant to say, because this is a whole video on the PlayStation 1 games. And so now we're going to be moving on to our next video. Any minute now, I'm going to sort of pause this in a second. We're going to move on to the next bit, and we'll talk about the next game, which was, well, I'll tell you what the next game is in just a moment.
And finally, the final game that we've got in this part of the video is a game from 1997, and it's Star Wars Masters of Terracassa. Master of Terracassi? Casa? Not quite sure how you say this one. Now, this game is pretty good. I'm a big fan of fighting games, and this was a Star Wars fighting game in the sort of like the style of like a Tekken tournament. Now, as we look into this one, you can see it's got much more. Now, if you get this game now, if you try to emulate this game, you're probably not going to do very well, because this is back in the time where all of the moves for the characters were based in the game manual. So if you don't have the game manual, it is quite tricky to actually play this game.
So from the start of the game, you get a pretty good sort of introduction, a CGI cutscene that shows you all the players that you can play as in this. Now, the characters that you get range from Luke Skywalker, Vader, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Chewbacca, a new character called Arden Lin, Boba Fett, a stormtrooper you can unlock later, and a Tusken Raider called Hor, and a Gamorrean soldier called Thok. And something that's much cooler is you can actually unlock Mara Jade from the extended universe. For people that don't know, Mara Jade was in the old Star Wars canon Luke Skywalker's wife and had a purple lightsaber. Now, from what you can see here, this is a pretty basic fighting game, and I know a minute ago I did say it was really good, but it's honestly, playing it again now, it's not that good. I think that was mainly just nostalgia talk. Lightsabers are just sort of downgraded to like bats, where you can just hit each other with. But what is pretty cool here, considering this game came out way before the Phantom Menace, you see the first instance here of a double-bladed lightsaber which Leia has, and this was kind of before any sort of canon that Leia had been Force sensitive and any idea that she could become a Jedi. But getting back to the actual gameplay of it, the game is a bit clunky. It's very sort of like, there's no actual combos. You can learn how to do moves, and there's certain moves you can do, but they're very, very hard to pull off. And it's a very basic fighting game. Like, I remember when I was younger, I had a lot of fun playing this game, playing it 2-player, and just sort of like going crazy in it when you can unlock all the other characters like Darth Vader and such, and it gets really fun at that point. But playing it again now, it's just a bit weird. It's a bit hard, a bit too hard, I'd say, actually, for a PS1 game. But like the previous games, you can tell that there's a lot of love and attention has gone into these games, especially with like the extended sort of character roster that there is that you can play as. But it just invents this weird sort of Star Wars alternate universe where everything is settled in like a tournament rather than the actual way that they settle it in the films. Like, for what reason would a Force-sensitive Leia with a double-bladed lightsaber be fighting Luke in Dagobah? It makes no sense, it's stupid, and it's dumb. And I kind of like it still, only it is just very dumb, and it's very stupid, and I don't think anyone should ever think of this as a canon game. Now, one of the things that is incredibly annoying about the game is the AI just seems to go all out all the time. I don't think there is a difficulty setting. If there is, I couldn't find it. But the enemies that you fight in this and the computer AI are over the top. One thing I had noticed playing it again is that all of these sort of like new characters. So here you can see me fighting Arden Lin. She's a brand new character, and just like that, they'll pump out these massive power moves that are just unstoppable. You can't get past them. And the game is just merciless, absolutely merciless. It knows how to do these like special like jumps and kicks that you can't block. Especially if you're on the floor, it can do this ground attack. There he goes. Even if you get up, you get hit by it. It's so annoying. So get used to seeing that you lose screen, because you're gonna see it a lot. Like, you see it pretty much all the time, unless you're some sort of fighting game whiz. It's just ridiculous. Now, this is one of my favourite extended universe characters that turns up in this game, a Gamorrean called Thok, which is just a stupid name. Why did no one ever think of like testing that with an audience? And as you can see, he does this move where he just jumps and like bottoms the floor, and this power grid just turns up around him. It's unskippable. It always hits you, and the game's pretty cheap when it comes to things like that. Like, it will always get you. It always knows exactly where you are, what you're doing, and you have to really cheese the game to try and win some of these fights. But aside from that, it's an alright game. I wouldn't really recommend it unless you're a hardcore Star Wars fan. But one of the cool things you can do in it is that by holding different buttons when you select people, you can actually get different outfits. So here you can change the Jedi Luke with the green lightsaber, but if you hold down select when you select a character, you actually activate big head mode. And I always appreciate a big head mode in games, even though, as we're about to see, it's not the biggest of heads, but it still looks dumb, and I still like having a big head mode. It reminds me of GoldenEye. So yeah, overall it's an okay game. Wouldn't really recommend it. It's fun for nostalgic reasons, and it's very stupid. So yeah, it gets a pass.
So that is the midpoint of this video. Thank you so much for getting up to this point. If you are enjoying this video, please remember to like and subscribe to my channel, as I'm going to do plenty more of this sort of style of video. This is kind of like a bit of a test to see how it goes out, these longer videos. So please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And we're going to go on to the next game. Now we get to a main part in the Star Wars franchise, and this is when the Phantom Menace sort of first came out. So in 1999, when the Star Wars Phantom Menace came out, the first Star Wars game on the PS1 was a movie tie-in game, Phantom Menace. Now this game is infamous, and we'll go through that in the video.
So the Phantom Menace video game, or movie tie-in video game, starts off with like a reimagining or retelling of the story. It loosely follows the events of the film, but does sort of take a bit of an artistic liberty with how the story plans out and what different characters say. Now, the first thing you'll notice is the voice acting doesn't sound anything really like the actors that portray the characters in the film. Just listen to this Liam Neeson.
The Viceroys are cowards. This meeting will be short.
It just doesn't really sound that right, if you ask me. I think it just sounds a bit wrong. So the footage I've captured here is mainly just from the first level of the game, just because I couldn't really play too much more of it. The most jarring thing about this game I've played in a very long time. Camera angles in any game I've played in a very long time. Camera angles in any game I've played in a very long time. I think the combination of this camera angle and the Resident Evil-like tank controls just make this game so hard, way harder than it needs to be as well. But overall, it is your typical sort of action-adventure game with a couple of RPG elements that we'll get through in a minute towards the end of this sort of footage gameplay. And as you can see, the coolest thing about this is you really get to sort of explore areas from the film that you didn't really get.
Be a control panel nearby that will open.
For example, the footage you're seeing at the moment is just Obi-Wan running around this sort of Trade Federation ship, and you get to see all the different parts, and sort of there's loads of secrets in this game. So if you can see here on the screen at the moment, to the left there's obviously, well, to the right here there's the door that you're supposed to go through, but if you go back to where we just were, there's this sort of capsule in the corner. Now to get into that capsule, you just go run down here, random droid for no reason whatsoever, you end up fighting in a bit, kill a random droid for no reason whatsoever, you end up fighting in a bit, kill a random droid for no reason whatsoever just because they tried to poison you, and then there's a little protocol droid that you can take over to the little area that you just were, and he'll unlock the door. And it's the small little touches like that in this game that gives it a little bit more charm than it actually deserves. And it really just adds sort of like a little bit more detail and depth to these levels. So as you can see here he is, come on, open the door for me, you little boy. And then you can get loads of little hidden secrets and extra things to help you along your way in your sort of Jedi journey. Now throughout the whole game you get to take on different sort of main characters from the series. First off, you play as Obi-Wan, you get to play as Qui-Gon, and I'm pretty sure you get to play as Queen Amidala a little bit later, along with a few other sort of main characters and side characters from the actual film. Now I played through this game quite a few times when I was younger, and I used to absolutely love it, but going back to it now, it's just a bit, I don't know, a bit hard to get used to again. I don't know whether it's because of the controls or it's just a bit of a strange game to go back to. Games have progressed and changed quite a lot. If you compare this sort of game to games like Fallen Order, it's like comparing cats and dogs. But for the first sort of movie tie-in game of the prequel trilogy, it was pretty cool. I liked it a lot as a kid. I wouldn't really recommend it now. If I had to recommend it, I'd say get the PC version if you can track it down, because it's much better on PC. Now, one of the things that have always annoyed me since I was very young is up on the left you can see the Radiant 7, the Chancellor ship, just explode. And the reason why that just annoyed me, and I don't know why this has always just annoyed me, is that is the sort of the thing that sets the Jedi off when they're waiting for the diplomats in the room that gets poisoned at the very start of the film. So for it to explode there when you're exploring the ship doesn't make any sense, and it's a continuity error, and I don't know why no one ever thought about it, but for some reason ever since I was really young it's stuck in my mind and it's really annoyed me. So I just had to say that now, because we're going through the game again, and even now I thought I could get over that, but no, it's there. The continuity's wrong and it's still in the game, and it still annoyed me as much as it did as a kid. But like I said at the beginning of the video, it does kind of follow its own version of events of Star Wars Episode 1, and I guess I can let it slide, but it still really does annoy me for some reason. I don't know why, it shouldn't annoy me, it just does. Now, one of the other things you notice as well is the hitboxes on this game are very, very weird. Like, sometimes you can throw a force like push and knock everyone over and everyone dies, and other times, like there, it clearly hit both of them, but only one of them went flying. I thought this was just because I'm maybe not strong enough, but it turns out, no, it's not. It's just the game's got really dodgy hitboxes. And you'll come across parts in the game as well where you think something's part of a puzzle and it's just not. So for some reason I thought you could push these boxes, and they look like boxes that you should be able to push because they're just sort of set in a way that, you know, look like they should be moved. It's like when you're playing a game and you see a part of the wall a different colour and you think, oh, that's clearly a hidden door. So I thought, yeah, them boxes can get pushed off to crush the droids below, but apparently not. They're just weirdly coloured boxes out of the middle of nowhere. And in the footage you see here, you're going to really see me be dense as hell when playing this, because I just couldn't work out what I was supposed to be doing. But going back to talking about sort of the RPG elements that this game has, is you actually get the opportunity to talk to many characters throughout the game, and you have these nice sort of multiple choice options for sort of dialogue, which is really cool. It's almost like kind of reminiscent of the Knights of the Old Republic games, where you get to talk a bit more, but you actually can hear your character speak, or the voice actor do an impression of the character speak.
I must find a way to cut the door's power.
No!
And like I said, the voice acting is a bit ropey. Some of the actors did return to reprise their roles, such as Jake Lloyd lends his voice back to this, and so does Armis Best, who voices Jar Jar Binks, also returns for his incredible Oscar-worthy role of Jar Jar Binks. Now, the footage you're seeing here is me just being incredibly dense and not really understanding what I was supposed to be doing, accidentally killing innocent Viceroy, and just like, I knew I had to cut the power to the generator, I just didn't see the door next to me, and this is just me being an absolute idiot, swinging a lightsaber around like a baseball bat, trying to work out what panels to explode. And yeah, that's just me being dumb. And then there's a moment of realization just here where I realize there's a door and a energy sort of supply inside for me to destroy. That's not really a mark against the game, that's just me being an idiot, so you know, it gets a pass for that bit as well. But I could be petty and say, well, the game wasn't clear about what I was supposed to be doing, but you know, no, that's just me being dumb. Sort of coming to the end of the footage now of what I've captured, because in a minute I get absolutely gunned down by about 100 droids that turn out of nowhere. And I just want to say, yeah, it's alright. I wouldn't really recommend this game. It's not aged very well at all, but then not many PS1 action games have aged that well. So, you know, it's one of them things. It came out in 1999 and it shows a lot. Like I said twice before, if you're going to try and play this game, you might as well get it on PC because you can change the view angle and it's much better. So yeah, that's the episode 1 tie-in game that came out on PS1 in 1999, and it's a alright game, solid average I guess, and there's me dead. So that's the end of the footage we've got so far.
And then next up we've got another game that came out in 2000, so it came out a year after, and is another Episode 1 tie-in game, which you've got Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. Now this game wasn't only just on the PS1, it did also come out on the Dreamcast, but it is a great game. It is like a little bit more of an arcadey beat 'em up game that you play through, and it's got like the first time you get to play as other Jedi Knights that aren't in the actual storyline. You can play as Mace Windu, you can play as Poe Kloon. There's so many good things, and if you play the Dreamcast version, you can actually unlock Kaimonde, which is quite a cool little thing that you can do in this game. Now, I really like this game. I played this game the most out of all of these because I was obsessed with like arcade beat 'em up games and like fighting games in general. And yeah, we'll get on with this one.
So when you start the game, you get this fancy CGI loading screen, and then you get the character select screen, and you can play as quite a few different Jedi in this game. You get the choice between Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn, Mace Windu, Adi Gala, who had a red lightsaber, Plo Koon with a yellow lightsaber, but there's also a host of other secret unlocked characters that you can get as Queen Amidala if you complete the game as Obi-Wan, Quash Pankana, who is like the captain of the guard for Naboo, Darth Maul, and also, only exclusively to the Dreamcast version, you can play as Kaimonde, as I've already said. Please forgive me on the pronunciation of some of these names, because they are not easy names to pronounce. And just like the previous Phantom Menace game, you sort of go through the events of the film, but they have taken massive liberty to make it more of an arcade beat-em-up style game. Here's some footage of me just playing as Obi-Wan Kenobi as you just sort of like tear through all these droids, and this game is way more fun than the other Episode 1 tie-in game. It's much more action-packed and just in general really fun. However, the controls can be a little bit weird, as sort of like the hitboxes and the direction that you stand in sort of don't really match up properly. So one of the things the game doesn't tell you is actually a secret platformer. There are so many platforming sections in this game, and it's actually quite annoying. It really takes out the sort of immersion of this action-packed game to then have to slow the pace down to do these really tricky and really hard obstacles. And the fixed camera angle really don't help. It's quite hard to gauge sort of like the depth perception, whether or not you're going to make some of these jumps or just fall to your death, because unfortunately you do take fall damage and you die quite a lot from falls that you wouldn't think would kill a Jedi. So one of the interesting things here is I'm actually playing as Mace Windu, and as you can see he's got a blue lightsaber rather than his purple lightsaber. This is mainly because at that point when Episode 1 had come out, we hadn't seen Mace Windu with a lightsaber, and the idea of a purple lightsaber just didn't exist at the time. So it's quite interesting to see what sort of the developers thought the other Jedi lightsabers would be. For example, Plo Koon in this game also has a yellow lightsaber, which we wouldn't even see in canon until Rey got a lightsaber at the end of Rise of Skywalker. As well as Ada Gala, one of the other characters you can play as, has a red lightsaber, which was typically only seen in canon as a Sith lightsaber, but in this anyone has any colour, just to sort of distinguish them more from different characters you can play as. As you go along the hack and slash sort of gameplay, you can get power-ups. As you can see, I've got one at the moment which gives me more damage to my lightsaber, and a little bit later on we get one that extends the length of your lightsaber, which is pretty cool. But yeah, overall that's pretty much all I can really say about the gameplay. It's standard hack and slash game with some very hard platforming elements, and I absolutely love this. I played this game so much as a kid when I had it, And I don't actually think I completed this when I was younger. I remember it being incredibly hard as you get through later levels, and I'm pretty sure I had to use some cheats to actually complete the game when I was young, because I was that type of kid that if I was struggling on a game, I would have no worries with using a cheat, just activating like infinite health or something like that just to get through a game. But as I've previously said, this game is way more action packed than the other episode 1 tie-in game, and it's just so much more fun. I loved playing this again. I loved going through it. It was so nostalgic for me just to remember this game, just to sort of like remember the different secrets, the hidden areas, the things like that you can do. It was so fun. It took me a while to remember how to use the force powers, just because I'm a bit of an idiot and I don't read manuals that well, even though I collect the manuals as part of the boxes, because it comes from that era where the game developer assumed that you would read the manual from cover to cover before playing the actual game, which is like non-existent anymore. You don't get manuals in games. Now, one thing playing it again now is what I remember the most is that there seems to be an absence of like combos that you can do to actually attack people. And this is what I said earlier about the extra long lightsaber that I can get, the extra long power up lightsaber, which is just ridiculous. I'd love to see like a Darth Vader fight with Luke Skywalker, except for they've both got like super long lance-like lightsabers. It would be so stupid, and that's why this game is really, really fun, because it just like it embraces stupidity of a beat 'em up game and just runs with it, and it's just like unapologetic with how silly it is with the Star Wars universe, and sort of like the story. It, like I said, does follow the episode 1 story, but is just a little bit more like fighty and more action packed. Like they definitely put a few more scenes in here just to make it a bit more action and a bit more sort of like beat 'em up style game. And the fact that you can play the whole of the Phantom Menace storyline, or like their reimagining of the storyline, with any of the Jedi that really aren't in the film that much. To my knowledge, I only think Mace Windu is in a very few scenes of the actual film. He's basically at the Jedi Temple and doesn't really do much else other than sort of look somber and sort of complain that there's a Sith Lord about, which is kind of what all the other Jedi do, other than Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, who actually seem a bit more like able to do their job as a Jedi Knight. So this is like the first level of the game, still just footage from the first level of the game as I'm playing as Mace Windu, and I think it's about to come up to sort of the first main boss of the level. Now, each level is normally comprised of sort of the platforming elements and then a mini boss and then a final end boss. There are a few sort of deviations of that formula, but it's more or less the same thing on each level in just sort of new areas. I remember like the next level after this, you get to sort of run around the forest of Naboo, and then I vaguely remember a Tatooine level where there's a giant armadillo creature rolling around trying to kill everyone, and it's just ridiculous as well. But honestly, each of the characters that you get in this game, everyone from Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn, like Mace Windu, like I've said before, they all feel completely different. That's just me showing off the force powers that Mace Windu can do, and you also get items that you can throw. Mace Windu has a grenade, and they all have like sort of different variations of grenades. I'm pretty sure Qui-Gon had like an EMP grenade, and Obi-Wan has like a stronger frag grenade or like a cluster grenade, if I remember correctly. So they all have like different items, different force powers, and different sort of kind of combos. The combos aren't really that good in this game. It's nothing more than sort of like XXX to like hit people, because like the main controls are standard with like a light attack, a heavy attack, a lunge attack, and then a jump button, and that's pretty much all you get. Coming up to the first boss of the game, you have to fight sort of one of them flying droids whose names I can't really remember, while these other droids just come in and just punch you. And as a kid, I found this boss really hard, because what you have to do is have to deflect back these like blaster shots that they're firing at you, and you just have to sort of block them right as they hit you to deflect them directly back at the target, which is a good mechanic to have in a game, but it can be a little bit tricky sometimes. And you can do that with pretty much any enemy that fires a blaster at you. Just as you block it, you can deflect it right back, which makes you feel like a Jedi. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot. But honestly, like I don't really remember this part of the film, and I imagine like I said, artistic liberty and making the game more fun, because if it was just based on the action in the Phantom Menace film, there just wouldn't be. There'd be like 3 levels, or like 1 level where you just fight just a few things and that's it, because the first one doesn't really have a lot of Jedi battles in it, other than the big fight to Duel of Fates at the end, and then maybe when Qui-Gon has a little fight with Darth Maul on Tatooine. I can't really think of any other big lightsaber battles. Maybe another bit where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon save the Queen Amidala for some droids while they're being sort of escorted somewhere. And yeah, it's a good game. I like this game a lot. I would recommend it to most people. Anyone that's a big Star Wars fan, if you're a big beat 'em up game fan, then yeah, recommend this. If you're a fan of like Streets of Rage or anything like that, Double Dragon, it feels like that sort of game, but it is brutally hard in some parts. So personally, I think this game is designed to be a 2-player game, so make sure you have someone else to play it with you. However, I will say you do share lives, so that does get annoying. So if you have someone that's not as good as you, then yeah, beware. And this is just some footage from the second game with my main boy Qui-Gon Jinn with his lovely green lightsaber. I don't know what it is about this version of Qui-Gon Jinn where he's a bit more of like a samurai sort of S-person. You can just tell that they influenced his like fighting style on samurai and the way he holds his lightsaber. And for some reason I feel like in this game they've got the green of his lightsaber down. Like, it doesn't look bland or like dull, it's like vibrant green and really stands out. So that's why Qui-Gon was always my favourite character in this game, because he's just a machine in this bit. Here we're in the forests of Naboo and you get sort of stuck in a stampede of people as you run after Jar Jar, who is very annoying in this game as well as in the film. And then you just sort of run through the forest and kill a load of droids. It's very action based. What more can I say? There's a little bit more of a force move from Qui-Gon Jinn where he just like obliterates everyone around him. It's the most handy move to have, which is probably why I got so far with Qui-Gon, because he's just got an area effect force move that just knocks everyone back and destroys most people. So yeah, I would say Qui-Gon's the best character in this. Though saying that, some of the unlocked characters that you can get are really good as well. So like if you unlock Darth Maul, he does only have a single-bladed lightsaber rather than a double-bladed lightsaber, which I guess is just something that the developers just didn't have the time to put in. And I never really played this game on the Dreamcast, but I know the Dreamcast version, when you unlock Monday, he's a lot stronger than the other characters, because I guess they just had to have an exclusive reason why to play this. But yeah, it's a good game. I recommend this a lot, like I've already said. And yeah, I don't know what more I can really say about it. This is just some more footage of me going through. It's definitely my favourite Star Wars game, or Episode 1 Star Wars game that came out. I play it quite regularly. It's probably one of my favourite Star Wars games that's ever come out, just because of how silly and how stupid it is, but also it's got good gameplay minus the platforming sections. Like if you watch now, I think I'm just about to get to another platforming section where the sort of I pretty much die instantly from a height that doesn't seem like it should kill a Jedi. So you just got to like jump up these sort of toadstools, and then I fell off and die. And that's pretty much everything I have to say about Jedi Power Battles on the PS1. It's a good game. I recommend it a lot, and it's probably my favourite Star Wars Episode 1 game that they ever brought out. Now, on to the final game that came out for the PS1.
And the final game that we've got for Star Wars, the final PlayStation 1 game, came out in 2000, November 2000, and it is Star Wars Demolition. Now, this is a Twisted Metal clone, but I genuinely love this game as well. I played this one a lot. I had both of these two in a double pack when I was younger. I got them together with my PlayStation 1, and I have some great memories of this game, but it's not really lived up to time. But yeah, we'll get on with this one as well.
So as you start this game, you're treated to this amazing 3D interactive menu select screen where you're absolutely thrown around Jabba's palace. And you can really see that they put a lot of attention to detail in this. There's so many little hidden things that you get to see as you fly around his like gang hideout. It brings you then to the sort of the player select screen, and there's a lot of players that you can play as in this. You've got a choice between sort of, and I do apologise for absolutely butchering these names, Maliki the Rancor Rider, Wade Vox on the Land Speeder, Tamtel Sklee on the Desert Skiff, Tia and Cheer in the Snow Speeder, Aurora Singh on the Swoop Bike, Quag in the AAT, Pugwis the Pod Racer, Witten on the STAP, General Otto in the ATST, Boba Fett just playing as Boba Fett, and you can even unlock Darth Maul on a Sith Speeder, Bush on a speeder bike, and Lobot on the Cloud Car. And I absolutely murdered some of them names. So like I said, you get loads of ones that you can unlock and things that you can play as, and really it's just like a 3D Twisted Metal clone where you just get to use different sort of Star Wars vehicles and you just get to go and destroy each other. Now, most of the environment is actually destructible, which is pretty cool, and you just sort of like, I don't know, you can ram each other, you get unlock power-ups that you can like destroy each other with, you get like a quad rocket, you get like a normal sort of like ion grenades, mines, a tractor beam. There's so many different things that you can get in this, and overall it's pretty fun. It's a little bit clunky, and you tend to end up damaging yourself a lot more than you're damaging other players, but I think overall it's good. I like it a lot. Now, like I said, I got this in a double pack with Jedi Power Battles, and the game released in November 2000, and I honestly have no idea where in the sort of Star Wars storyline this is supposed to take place, because it's not part of Legends, and it's not really part of, well, it's not at all part of Disney's new continuity that they brought out. So the premise of the story is that Jabba the Hutt is hosting a demolition derby style tournament across multiple planets and locations in the Star Wars universe, and you select a player and just try and win the tournament. The tournaments are very hard. The AI is merciless with this game. This is for people that are good at games, or good at, like, have practiced a lot. Now, you can play up to like 2 players as well, which is really fun, just to like have your mates playing, and you can put a few bots in as well, which really makes it a lot more fun. And there's a lot of secrets in each level that really adds sort of like to replay value. As you can see here, I just get like dragged into the Zarlak pit and just crunched up, and it takes all of my health. It was actually quite annoying doing that, but then you get yeeted into the sky and you get a moment just to like get your bearings. But yeah, it's a good game. I would recommend it a lot. It's definitely a unique game in the Star Wars universe, is it doesn't actually have any sort of Jedi in the game. The only Force user that you can actually play as is an unlockable character of Darth Maul, but even then he's on his Sith speeder, the little sort of round one that he almost mows down Anakin in sort of a Phantom Menace. But what was really cool for me is that you can actually play as Aurora Singh in this game, which is sort of like a favourite among the sort of fans of the extended universe. She was sort of written out of continuity and then brought back in. Now, when you fail certain missions, you get treated to these amazing CGI cutscenes of just Jabba and everyone else in this palace just laughing at you. There you go, there's Aurora Singh about to gut you for basically failing to win a tournament. But yeah, you're treated to these lovely sort of CGI pre-rendered cutscenes where you just see your character get absolutely murdered while Jabba just laughs at you, and they're pretty funny. I like them, they're very silly, and that's how I would describe this game, silly. And yeah, that's the best way to sort of have a Star Wars game, is have a silly game. It doesn't really impact any of the Star Wars universes. It's not sort of like, it's not Jedi Academy, it's not trying to be like this deep, dark, mysterious game. It's dumb, it's stupid, and it's fun. That's why I like this game a lot. Also, I just want to point out, you can play as Boba Fett in this game, which I seem to think is really unfair, considering everyone else is in vehicles and Boba Fett is just on his little jetpack flying around with his weird sort of dangle leg mechanic that the physics engine's got going on here. It looks so strange. Like, I feel like the lower part of his body is animated completely different to the top half of his body, and the fact that this map you're actually seeing now is supposed to be the Death Star, so I don't understand how he's able to survive out in space. I don't know if the Mandalorian armor can do that. It probably can, but as you'll see here, another person is just on a Rancor in the middle of space. It doesn't need to make sense because it's a stupid game, and I think the developers knew it was going to be a stupid game, so they just sort of went with it. But yeah, that's the final Star Wars game. There's not really much more I can really say about the PS1 Star Wars games. I think I've covered all of them now. I definitely have covered all of them now. But yeah, that's all there is to Star Wars Demolition on the PS1. It's a good game. I like it a lot, and I would recommend it to most people. It's definitely a hidden gem on the platform, and to this day it still plays up pretty well. Like, the controls work fine, everything works good, and yeah, that's all I really have to say about Star Wars Demolition.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I've had a great time making this video. I put a bit more effort into this video than I've done with other ones. I actually wrote a script for it, even though it may sound like I didn't, and planned this out over a couple of days. So if you like these longer videos where I go through like a whole franchise, please just let me know, and I will try and make as many more as I can for other things. If you have liked this, please remember to like and subscribe to the video, share it to a friend, and let me know in the comments below what was your favourite PlayStation 1 Star Wars game, or if you have any other Star Wars games that you really like. I'm always happy to just just talk about it with anyone at all. I absolutely love Star Wars. I'll try and reply to as many comments as I can. And thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.